Dun dun dun. That's gonna get old really quick. I'm gonna have to think of something else until I get like a little tune or jingle going. But, anyways, welcome back to another episode of me blah blah blahing into this microphone. Thank you for being here. So my idea for today was kind of just to talk about a lot of things that I've heard in passing in mostly this year, but also a bit of last year as well. Kind of just things that really inspired me and gave me a lot of hope, because what I see around me is a lot of people that love the world and want to make a difference, but they just think that we're all doomed. And I get that. I get it. I do even joke about that sometimes. But the ability to create change and make a better world only happens when we believe that we can, and when we know that we can, and when we see that we can. So I think that that's really important. And so I'm just going to share some things that have helped me see that we can, and helped me believe that we can, and helped me know that we have always fought for a better world. There has always been people that have known and that have tried and that have accomplished a lot. And that's why we are where we are today. That's why I'm able to take classes in the stuff that I am today. That's why in my sociology class we talk about, the people that created sociology, but then we also talk about how sociology has improved a lot since then, and it's changed a lot, and things that sociologists used to believe that were like wild and crazy. But so these are just some stories that have really changed my perspective and pulled me back into like loving the world again, because I think it's important to love the world. So I hope you guys enjoy some of these stories. So the first example I'm going to kind of go over is the Christmas truce. And I wrote truces here because this happened like a few times. And there were several occurrences of it over the Western fronts, especially of World War One. But basically, so a couple months into World War One, it kind of started in the summer, and we're talking like Christmas time now. And these people are in the trenches. They've been fighting, killing each other for an ego battle between their country powers, which we're not going to get into today, but we will get into in several other episodes. But these soldiers, they're shooting each other. They're trained to shoot each other, and we're trained to believe that that's human nature, right? That we go to war with each other, that we want conflict, that it's always going to happen. But on December 24th, literally all it took was the sound of German soldiers singing Christmas carols for both sides in their trenches to decide to meet in the middle of no man's land and have a Christmas party. Doesn't that just feel like that's human nature? That all it took was the sound of Christmas carols, the humanization of the other opposition, of the other war party, of the other soldiers. All it took was the realization we're both humans for them to put down their weapons and meet each other in the middle and have a Christmas party. They were drinking together and laughing and telling each other jokes. And this is real, and this happened several times all across the front lines of the war. In the trenches, people came together to have a Christmas party together. Only 5 months into the war. Look, I'm not saying the conditions weren't already terrible, but I think it would be almost less like impactful for it to have been like years into the war, because they're really in the depths of it, and it's been horrible, and it's been so long, and you just want human connection. But it's fresh. They had just been sent off there. A lot of these people were new, and they still did that. Because that's humanity. We see each other and we want to be with each other. We don't want to kill each other. We don't want to die. Nobody wanted to be in those trenches. Nobody. But we were. And then we somehow believed that we wanted to be. That was inevitable. Nobody wanted to be there. Nobody. And if they did, it was because they were told that it was honorable to sacrifice their lives and kill others in some ego battle between countries. That's not human nature. It's a part of who we can be. But human nature is so many things. And it's not just conflict. It's also peace. And it's also love. And it's also having a Christmas party in the middle of a war. And the only reason they went back to fighting is because they had to. And they were punished for it. They were punished for finding peace. They were punished for finding a middle ground. And that's the reason they went back to fighting. That story really, really impacted my life. And I think about it all the time. We can be made into soldiers. Humans can be made into soldiers, and we see that. It's very clear. But it's not who we are. It's not all that we are. For as many soldiers that exist, there's people that would never do that because they haven't been trained to be. They haven't been made to be. It's not who we are. It's who we can be, but it's not who we are. And we live in a society that socially reproduces people that participate in violence and domination and conquest and all of these things. But if we were able to find a different culture, a different set of laws, and a different societal structure that ensured that people didn't socially reproduce into dominative, violent people, if we based our society in ethical principles of care and love and reciprocity and mutual aid, if we did that, if we implemented that into society, we would reproduce a different kind of human, a different kind of society. And we could do that. It's totally possible. It's totally possible. Right now, the reason that humans end up becoming this thing, and doing horrible things to people and to nature, to animals, is because we live in a society that normalizes it, that desensitizes us, that dehumanizes other people. If we created a society together that mandated learning how to understand each other and learning how to love each other and learning how to care for and respect each other, we could have a better society and it would reproduce better human beings. It just would. And I always like to contradict the whole philosophical, like, does money and power create like a type of person that is decent, like that doesn't care about people? Does money and power corrupt people? And I think what it is we live in a society that the more money and the more power you achieve, the more society's institutions and culture is structured around conditioning you into being desensitized. Because in order to be the wealthiest person in the world, you have to exploit people. You have to exploit nature. You have to participate hugely in climate change. The extinction of human beings from this planet, you have to participate in that. And you can't do that. You cannot if you love people, if you love nature, if you love animals. There are millions and millions of people that never became billionaires, not because they couldn't, but because they didn't want to do what it took, because they believed it was wrong. There's a lot of people out there that are like that. Even like Jeff Bezos's ex-wife, Mackenzie, she just married like a science teacher, and she's giving all of their money away, which I will be honest, we're going to get into charities a little bit later in this episode, but in the grand scheme of things, I think it's important to note that she had access to anything she wanted, but she just wanted love. She just wanted someone who she connected with. And she didn't care about all of this money. You know what? Maybe she's giving it away for her public image. But she could have committed to giving away half and not like pretty much everything. She's only keeping what she really needs. She's donated so much. Like I've done like 3 projects now on organizations and like not for profits and stuff that have received their biggest donations from Mackenzie Scott. Anyways, so I'm not defending her character. I don't know her. I'm not sure she's an honorable person or anything like that. That's not my point. My point is more that we could sit and argue all day that being Jeff Bezos is like somehow the pinnacle of what human nature is, and humans are just destined to be this. But then there's people like Mackenzie Scott that had all of that and they still turned away from it because the love wasn't there. That there's no love in money. There's no love in power. There's love in community, in people, in nature. And that's what's real and that's what's valuable. And we just can't see that. But I see it, and that's what makes me love everybody that I meet and everything that I see. And that's what keeps me going, and that's what motivates me to get out of bed in the morning, is because I do wake up and I think, ugh, this world is crazy. I go online and I see these terrible images and videos of violence and war and death and poverty and suffering. I see that every day. And I still believe that we can be better because I know that we are better, that we do better. There's people all over the world that are better. And it's because of we have society and we have a world where this global society now, because of globalization and stuff, we are all under this system where we dominate each other and we exploit each other and we abuse each other. And there, for every person that does that, there's like 10 people that would never dream of it and that don't want to be on top. And it's true. There are lots of people like that because they haven't somehow been desensitized, or they've learned better, or they've seen it. It's especially clear actually in school. And this has happened where it hasn't happened to me in university because most of my professors share this ideology, which is that when it comes to sharing your notes, I've had like teachers, especially in my like private school, not as much my public school, more because, you know, they're not paid to care more about students and their personal life, which is fair if they don't because they need to be paid more. Regardless of that, because I'm not going to get into it. That's going to be its whole own episode about teachers and everything. But when I had teachers in private school tell me, you know, you don't want to share your notes with your classmates because what if they do better than you? The argument that, you know, it's okay if other people do better, the reason why it always seems to be able to be contradicted and like people always find a way to make you feel stupid for being like, we can all be first, is because it's true, we can't all be first. However, we can create a society that doesn't have a first place. And I'm not talking about sports. I get it. I really think that sports at the end of the day, I think it's fair to, you know, have winners and losers. If we lived in a society where sports were equitable and being able to participate in sports was easily accessible to everyone, I agree. Like, I think a little competition is fair. But I think within societal structure, what we have now is we have a thing where, like I said in episode 2, we're talking about hierarchies. I think I mentioned this, but maybe I didn't. It's true that if you put another group on top, the group on top would have to move down. Not everybody can be on top because we live in a hierarchy. We live in a hierarchical society. We could have a horizontal, a linear, a circular society. We could have that. And I'm not saying that people wouldn't be leaders in this. Obviously, not everyone would be able to, you know, be making sitting on the council or whatever. But that's where democracy comes in. True democracy, not whatever they want to make us believe democracy is today. But it's where we have collective decisions. We compromise with each other and we make choices. We don't sacrifice the opinions of people. We meet in the middle. And I know it sounds like so impossible to imagine. Even I have a hard time like grasping being able to find a real example, because we live in a society where we're not taught to be able to imagine these things. But it's true that we could sit in our communities together, and when we're faced with a problem, we could sit in there and we could communicate until we found a solution that was compromisable. So, for example, in this society, right, we have localized agriculture, and the community over from us, even though we share nature, we share the world, it's not privatized within our communities. We do take care of our own kind of agriculture within localized communities, right? Because you don't want to, again, like start these people grow this, these people grow this, these people grow this, because that's how you kind of become a hierarchy, and exploitation starts happening. But most people would be in charge of their own kind of communal agriculture lots and things like that. And let's say like another community, they're having a really hard time with their soil. It's just like nothing's really growing right now. There's kind of a drought happening, and they've asked us to all help them out, right? We all come into our community, we sit down. There's a lot of people that think we shouldn't help them out because what if the drought affects us and then we're not going to have any resources? And there's a lot of people that are like, but if we don't share with them, then that's not fair. We would want them to share with us. And both points are valid and they're valid concerns. We would find a way to have a solution that both sides agree with. So maybe we could say, okay, we're going to help them out, but we're going to prioritize feeding our people over them, which I'm not saying I would agree with. I'm not saying what side I would be on, but I'm saying that's the compromise that would be made in a collective, horizontal, linear community structure. That's the kind of compromise that would be made. We would find a solution that would be agreeable to the beliefs, but would also be in agreement with obviously the law and the culture and the societal policy that we had in place. So maybe in this world, hopefully, we would have societal policy that says in times of need, it is our duty as communities to do what we can to provide for the people in need. So maybe we would say, okay, it's actually against the law to completely not help them. So we're going to rule out that decision immediately. And we're going to have to find a way to be like, okay, it's fair that you guys think that you're worried and you're concerned, but we need to meet in the middle and say, it is a part of our culture and a part of our way to help people. So we need to find a way that, addresses your concern, but also addresses the fact that we need to help these people. And I see that everywhere. I see it all around me in communities already. I have the most amazing communities in my sociology classes, in my GRSJ classes, when I'm at the Pride Collective at UBC. It's just like this incredible, amazing sense of community where we all just help each other. And it because we want to, because it's natural to us, because we love each other. Like, I meet people in my classes and me and some of the people from my classes went out to a drag show the other night, and we had a blast, and we became so close within a few conversations because we are people that love people, and that when you take sociology, you learn about people and you learn how to understand people, and it shows you this completely new perspective on society and how it's structured, and specifically how it could be restructured and how it could be different. But anyways, I want to get into a few more like specific examples of really like hopeful stories that changed my perspective. And another one was one that I learned recently from a TikTok creator who has dwarfism. And they were talking about a man named Benjamin Lay, who is a historical figure who had dwarfism. And he was anti-slavery, and he took a very radical approach to this. And so, although I think that it would be a more impactful example for him to not have a physical, condition that would have produced him with his own consequences in regards to how society treats people, I think it's still very important to note that he was allowed to participate in society at this time, and he was allowed to be an American. He wasn't just someone that was extremely mistreated, and that's why he stood up against slavery and against like capitalism and colonialism. It wasn't just because he was mistreated and all of this stuff. He, could have been in a pretty decent, comfortable societal position, but instead he chose to live in a cave because he hated people so much. I'm laughing because I think it's so funny and it's almost like relatable. But anyways, he did so many radical things. He got banned from being in society, but he would still show up to like their court hearings and just like yell stuff and like cause disruption and then like freak everyone out and stuff. He would just do a bunch of really radical things. And the most radical thing he would do is he would steal the children of slave owners and to show them how it felt. And I'm very much the type of person, I do in my core believe in killing with kindness, and revenge isn't the ultimate answer. I also think that if you're dealing with people that have so little empathy and are so desensitized to human beings and to life, that they are doing the things that plantation owners did to enslaved people, that I don't know, I can see and I can understand why that would have been his way of resisting that. I'm not saying I think it's appropriate to steal anyone's child. I understand. However, I'm not sure what he did to these children, but I am sure that the type of person who believes in not hurting people, I couldn't really imagine him taking the children and hurting them. I don't think that he did. We're going to take a brief cut right here, and I'm actually going to just look it up really quick. Okay, he did not believe that humans were superior to non-human animals and created his own clothes to boycott the slave labor industry. So this goes back to episode 2 when I'm talking about the hierarchy. Remember when I said the ability to desensitize and normalize people to slavery was by creating this hierarchy where humans are on top and animals are below them, and it's okay to exploit animals. So then they created this system where they scientifically, quote unquote scientifically, proved ways to make people believe that people of color, especially black people and indigenous people, were like closer to animals, and then that made it okay to dominate them and exploit them and enslave them and protrude this narrative that they were helping them and that they were helping them evolve and civilize or whatever. But since, this man, he didn't believe that humans were superior to animals, no amount of animalization and dehumanization of black people would have made him okay with slavery. And I think this is really actually an amazingly perfect example of how that hierarchy plays out and enables the desensitization and dehumanization that I'm talking about when it comes to being able to do these things to people, right? Because remembering there's a reason why people were okay with slavery, and it wasn't just because they thought it was okay and they were born thinking it was okay. It's because you're taught that it's okay, because again, we live in a society where it's okay for animals to be tortured and exploited and murdered. So therefore, humans that are animalized, that's also okay. So this is actually a better example than I was even imagining before, because it points out very clearly that once you begin to cherish and value all life, you are not okay with anything that goes on in regards to hurting people, hurting animals, hurting nature. And I'm not talking about veganism and vegetarianism specifically, because there is a way to participate in the natural ecosystem and still eat meat. It's not morally wrong. What's morally wrong is the way that we do it, and the way that we waste it, and the way that we don't care about the life behind it. Lives are taken so that we can survive, and that's okay. And that is natural. But what's not natural is us not acknowledging it, is us not participating in giving back to the earth the life that it gives to us. What's not okay is going to the grocery store and not even having to acknowledge the lives that we take to feed ourselves. That's what's not okay. And that's where it's broken. It's not broken in regards to using another life to sustain your own. That's the way that life works. That is the way that nature works. But the way that we do it, the way that we waste, the way that we don't care, the way that we force animals to live in these disgusting conditions, the way that we destroy the earth, that is not right. And that is not natural. So that's what I'm talking about in regards to valuing the natural world and valuing animal life. I'm not talking about not eating meat. I'm talking about not seeing the life of the meat that you're eating and not acknowledging it and not fighting for a society in which you know that the meat you are eating is a life that was taken respectfully and was taken with honor and was taken with an acknowledgement of the sacrifice and of the circle of life in general. But anyways, back to Benjamin Lay. He temporarily kidnapped the child of slaveholders to show them how Africans felt when their relatives were sold overseas. So just temporarily, he gave the children back. He didn't kill them or imprison them or anything like that. But anyways, that's another story that, inspires me in my life and gives me hope, because even back then, like, there was this guy who, he could have had it going. In regards to his height, it said he was about just over 4 feet tall. But that's just historical record, and in the grand scheme of things, if that doesn't qualify for dwarfism, he still would have, been treated in quite a similar way to how people with dwarfism would have been treated. And he could have had a life in society. He really could have. He was like a glove maker. He, was pretty well set, but instead he was like, this is wrong. And there has always been people like him that have known that. It's not just people on the very bad end of the stick, like the people at the very bottom. There's people at every level of this hierarchy that see that this is wrong and that want this to stop. And there always has been. There always has been. And another story. So if anyone has seen Rogue One, if you haven't, slight spoiler warning. Maybe just kind of skip forward like a minute or so max. It's just going to be really quick. If you've seen it though, you know the infamous story of how like the main character, her dad, was essentially like a Nazi version in the Star Wars universe. And she realized that he only worked with them to build the Death Star so that it could be destroyed. So he put the little thing in that eventually they got the plans for and then sent it off. And that's how Luke was sent like R2-D2 and stuff like that, right? And so what you may not know, though, is real life Nazis also did stuff like that. So there was people all throughout Nazi Germany that were high-ranking people, that were in positions of power, that were conditioned and manipulated and taught so many times to do horrible things, and they still refused. And not just did they refuse, they actually used their social power in order to help the people. So this one is Karl Plagg. He was an engineer who pretended to be pro-Nazi so he could employ Jewish workers and protect them. And he actually was being surveilled. Like, he was very aware of how dangerous the position he was in was, and how at any second, if any of those workers were found out to be Jewish, that he would probably be executed along with them. But he did it anyways. And he did it so much so that he actually helped a lot of them escape and find passports and find ways to get out of their position and get out of his factory so he could employ more. He's known as like the Schindler of mechanics, I think. And then there's another guy, Dr. Hans Munch, who performed fake experiments in Auschwitz in order to provide prisoners with food, water, and healthcare. So he would fake these elaborate, gruesome experiments, and instead he would actually provide them with healthcare and make sure they were fed and make sure they had water. And he did this for so long until the end of the war. And at the end of the war, when prisoners were starting to be taken out of Auschwitz and put further behind the front lines, because you have the German front lines being pushed back and back and back because they're losing, right? So they're taking people out of the front lines and out of their camps in the front lines and moving them back, you know? So as they were doing that, they started, transporting people out of Auschwitz. And this guy, he offered to steal SS uniforms for the prisoners so that he could give them to them and they could escape. But even they thought that that was too radical and that wasn't a good idea. So instead, he just gave them guns so that they could fight for themselves, and he gave them weapons. And I think this not only attests to like human nature in a way, but he also loved these people so much that he trusted them with his life and gave them weapons. You know what I mean? Because not to say that that's not the bare minimum of something that he should have done, but in the grand scheme of things, someone who's being taught all of these lies about Jewish people and actually about a lot of other groups of people like LGBTQ plus people, Romani people, disabled people. You're being fed all of these lies that they're evil and that they're violent and that they cause suffering and they cause inequality and they need to be eradicated. But then you have someone who, despite all of these conspiracies and lies and like academically validated myths, he still was like, these are human beings. This is life, and I will not do that to people, and I actually trust them with my own life. And I find that very, very inspiring when you see it from that way. And there are countless other stories of Nazi soldiers that did stuff like this, also that completely defected, but there's accounts of both, right? And another thing that very much inspires me is actually the alliance between Indigenous peoples and immigrants through the Nobody is Illegal on Stolen Land movement. So when you have a situation like the mistreatment of Indigenous peoples and the mistreatment of immigrants, what one of the strategies that is employed upon us does is it manipulates us to believe, and in this case it manipulates Indigenous communities to believe, or to direct actually their anger and that stems from their mistreatment by the state and by institutions. Their anger is directed towards immigrants. And what is really beautiful about this movement is that this group of Indigenous peoples who, by the way, I just want to put it out there and make it very clear that if you are a part of a community and your anger is turned towards another community, I do not fault you or believe that you are a bad person or believe or want to be condescending. I bet there are situations in my life where I think a problem is being caused by something and it's not, and I still don't know that. I'm still learning, I'm still growing, and I would never, ever, ever look down upon someone that is being so mistreated and their anger is being weaponized against another group. That's not what we're here for, and that's not what we do. So we don't look down on people that are really suffering and are hurting and don't know where to turn their anger towards. We all do that. We are all victims of this. So that's not what we want to do here. And I just want to make that very clear, because I understand that in a way, when that's not clear, it can sound condescending of me. Like, who am I to sit here and, say that Indigenous communities are having their anger weaponized towards immigrant communities? And that's not fair for me to sit up on my high horse and think that I'm, somehow better for being able to see that. That's not true. That is a note to my privilege, because I have the privilege to be able to afford to pay to go to a school like UBC and pay for a class in which class I am taught to see how this plays out in life. And that is a privilege of mine, especially because I'm a settler on Indigenous land. So therefore, actually, the reason why I'm able to learn this is because Indigenous people suffer. So it would absolutely be completely unjust for me to expect people to know this knowledge. So I just want to be very clear on that. But within the No One is Illegal on Stolen Land movement, what you have is the type of community and solidarity that I'm hoping to build with this podcast, is where we have immigrants and Indigenous peoples who, instead of, looking at each other and being like, you don't want me in here, and then the other side is like, we don't need more people coming in here when we don't even have access to clean drinking water, which are both fair and valid statements. I'm not saying that either of those statements are ridiculous or unrealistic or anything like that, but instead what I'm saying is that these two groups have been able to come together and say borders, the militarization of borders, and the creation of borders is what has caused both of our suffering, what has caused both of our pain, what is the reason behind both of our anger. And if we can come together and see each other as allies and turn and face towards the true institutions that are causing both of our suffering, then there is so much power in that. There is so much power in that. And I think this is one of the most inspiring movements when it comes towards seeing how solidarity between movements is so necessary to be able to create a better future, that I just love this whole movement coming together. And with that, I want to get into, for a couple minutes, not-for-profits and NGOs, because I feel like they really contribute to the sense of hopelessness. And I felt so empowered the moment I saw why we feel like we're doing so much and nothing is happening. It feels like these organizations are always donating and institutions are always committed to changing, and yet the world seems to somehow be getting worse. And we are made to believe this narrative that it's natural to us. So we see this around us and we're like, humans are terrible. We can't do better. We can't change. We might as well just give up. And that's where the hopelessness comes in. But seriously, this is because the reason why nothing is changing, even though we have all these not-for-profits donating billions and billions of dollars everywhere and, conquering global poverty and world hunger or whatever, is because the actions which make the money, which allows corporations to donate the money, are the same actions that are causing the problems that not-for-profits target. So there's many examples of this, but what I'm writing about for my class, just to kind of solidify that quite complicated statement, is that, so there's an organization called Rise Up, which they do a lot of really hard and good work to fight for gender equity in the world, but they receive donations from corporations like Apple and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is essentially Microsoft, and then other billionaire-owned corporations and foundations, which mostly exist for tax breaks. I'm not going to make such a bold statement as to say that every billionaire doesn't create a charitable organization for tax breaks, but I will say that most do. And that is just the truth. But these organizations and these not-for-profits and these NGOs, they get donations from corporations like this, right? And this is not like an opinion or a conspiracy theory. It is a real truth. The money that is made by these corporations, the money that they so philanthropically donate, that they're so kind as to give people a little sliver of, is made through pillaging and destroying and exploiting people and the land. In fact, like these companies, especially like Apple and Microsoft, are renowned for their huge impact on global poverty, inequality, food insecurity, and climate change, all things which cause and or play a role in gender-based inequality. So the picture is becoming increasingly clear here. We have an organization called Rise Up, and they're doing a lot of really important work. And we see an organization like that, and we're like, what's going on? What's happening? Why isn't this working? It's because the same organization that is doing the work is receiving money from corporations that are causing the problems they're doing the work for. So you see this disgusting cycle of like, the only reason why not-for-profits exist is because of exploitation, and exploitation exists because of a need for profit, and the need for profit creates profit, which they donate to the organizations, and then the organizations try to solve the problems, and it just keeps going in this cycle. And maybe you may ask, how does global poverty, inequality, food insecurity, and climate change all connect to gender-based inequality? And well, first of all, land grabs for industrial farming. So like taking land away from people in, especially in the global south. So you have these people that don't necessarily have a concept of land ownership. You know what I mean? And I'm talking mostly indigenous communities and peasants, which I'm going to be honest, I used to think peasants meant like poor people, which is a completely fair assumption. I think a lot of people feel that. So I just kind of want to put it out here now in case like anyone listening didn't know that. And I'm well aware that I definitely should have figured that out a long time ago. I'm not saying I learned this super recently, but just in general, I think it's important to make it clear that like peasants are more like, people that live off the land, like farmers, the local farmers and stuff like that. Very like sustainable, living off the land, not necessarily profiting off of their farming, but just, keeping themselves alive. So you have like peasants, indigenous communities, and like small local farmers, and they have their land taken away from them for industrial farming. And then this pushes all of them into cities, right? So they're forced to go into the cities, and now they need to make money to survive, because they used to be able to, just survive by growing their own food and having their land, but now that's all gone. They need to pay for food. So they need to go and make money. So they work in these factories. Who is commissioning the factories? Who's contracting the factories to make their products? Apple and Microsoft, obviously, as well as a lot of other companies, but just in relation to this example. So now you have all of these people that are pushed off their land, they're pushed into cities, they need to work for money, and they are being forced to work in these factories for very low wages and deplorable conditions. And within these factories, everyone is treated horribly, right? But women and gender norm-conforming people face increased consequences due to sexism and stuff like that. So this is where gender inequality starts coming in. And even on Rise Up's like official website, they talk about gender inequality within these factories and within these workplaces. And it's like, once you see it, you almost have to chuckle when reading it, because it's like the same corporations like Apple and Microsoft that are contracting these factories to make their products and creating the conditions to which you are fighting for gender inequality are donating you the money that they're making off of treating people like crap. And look, it is not, I'm not saying it's obvious, but once you see it, it's obvious. That's what I really mean by that, because I get it. I didn't used to know this. It didn't used to be obvious. Like, what do you mean not-for-profits are participating in the problem? They're trying to find solutions. They're trying to help people. They do help people. And although that's true, they do a lot of good work. Their problem is in the fact that they do work so that companies can continue creating the problems. That's the bad part. It's not that they're not doing good things, is that they're providing solutions to the problems created instead of trying to prevent those problems. Because if they tried to prevent them, then they wouldn't be funded by the corporations that are creating the problem. Anyways, another aspect of like all of this stuff that, you know, Apple and Microsoft is like and other corporations do in regards to like contributing to gender inequality is they force these workers to build stuff that stops working. So we'll throw it away. And then they send it off to places like India or somewhere. And then to get the money necessary to survive due to not being able to grow their own food, these people in these e-waste sites, so electronic waste sites, they are forced to disassemble and recycle our electronic waste. And this is done without proper equipment. This causes extremely fatal health conditions like cancer, infertility, defects in your child when it's born, all of these things, blindness, deafness, skin rashes, so many terrible things. And it is often actually women and children who are the people who have to do this work. So it is women and children who are most often exposed to recycling e-waste. So again, there's more gender inequality produced directly by Apple and Microsoft, like other companies as well. But in relation to this specific example, we have a not-for-profit that is trying to help like gender equity within the world, receiving donations from companies that profit off of creating gender inequity. And these companies have the audacity to donate to organizations who are trying to improve the conditions within the factories they contract to make their products. They do it so obviously in front of our eyes, and that's why they make us believe these ridiculous things like this is natural and this is just the way it has to be. Because when you know that it's not, it is so ridiculously wrong that it gets frustrating. I'm so angry right now thinking about it, because it's like we let them get away with it because we don't point it out, because we can't, and we're taught not to see it. And the only way that we can see it is if we pay them to teach it to us. And that's another thing that really makes me angry. I have to pay an institution like UBC, who invests in banks like RBC, who destroy and pillage the global south, especially who are contributing to climate change. I have to pay that institution to teach me about climate change. How does that even make sense? How does that even make sense? They're contributing to climate change, but the only people that are qualified to teach me about climate change and who would provide me with a degree that would give me the authority to speak out and actually have like validity in the academic world, I have to pay them. I have to pay them, the same institution that's creating climate change. I have to pay them to teach me about it. When we start to see how ironic this world is that we live in, it's like you get past the point of hopelessness and you just feel angry and ready for change. This is why it's not working. It's not because humans are evil. It's not because it has to be this way. It's because we're allowing the same people and corporations who are causing all of this suffering around us to pretend like they're going to fix it. No law or policy is going to fix any of this unless we start directing our energy towards the source instead of the consequences. We need to stop feeding hungry people, and we need to start ending hunger. And I'm not saying that we need to stop feeding hungry people right now and just start focusing on institutions. I think we need both. We need to continue to feed hungry people. And then we also need to look at the institutions that create hunger and end them. Because I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to keep living in a world where every day we have the television telling us that climate change is going to destroy the world. The same television that takes energy from creating climate change, because the energy created in order to power our televisions to tell us about climate change are creating climate change. I'm sick of living in this world. I'm sick of paying organizations to fix problems, and instead of fixing them, they just treat them. Instead of finding a cure, they just use treatments. I'm sick of it. I'm so sick of it. We need a cure. We need something that prevents this stuff from happening. We need something that prevents hunger. We need something that prevents poverty. We need something that prevents gender inequity. We don't need something anymore that just, treats it, that just treats the consequences, treats the individual. We need to heal. We need to grow. We need to change. This needs to get better. And we can get better. We have the power to do that. We have the power to end this game right now. And we need to stop believing that our power lies within the vote of our dollar, because that's how they get us. They're like, vote with your dollar. That's your economic power. Your economic power lies within refusing the dollar. And I am not demanding that of anyone. It would be completely unrealistic to expect people to stop buying things immediately. We all need to survive. And we need to buy things in order to survive, because our survival needs have been privatized and commodified and are being sold back to us. But instead, we need to have a society that builds community, where we learn how to sustain each other. We need to start taking the steps that are necessary to bring in the people around us in order to help each other. We got us. We can do this together. We don't need corporations to sell us water and food and shelter. We can do that. The earth gives us those things for free. If we take care of her, she gives them to us for free. We can do that. We can build for each other. We can grow food for each other. We can collect water for ourselves. We can have rivers that run clean and are not polluted, so we don't need Britas to drink water. We can do that. We don't need these companies. And that's the society that we need to build and that we need to work towards. And that is possible. We need to have community gardens to feed each other. We need to start learning to recycle clothes and make our own new, unique designs. We need to learn to share our skills with each other. I know it's difficult to imagine, but that's where the hope is. And it's already happening. I see it all around me. This stuff is already happening. Even without a society that is based in these principles, people still do that. So imagine if we built a society based in community, based in principles of helping each other and helping each other flourish and respecting nature and ensuring that food can grow from the ground and that microplastics aren't in our blood. We can do that, and it's already happening. It happens everywhere. People support each other. We help each other. It's already happening. Think about during COVID, how many people just came together to help each other just because. We did that, and we can do that, and we can keep doing that. We don't need corporations. If we have to do this ourselves, what's the point of them existing? If we have to feed ourselves, why do we have institutions established to feed us, but people are hungry? Why? If we have to feed ourselves, if we have to figure it out ourselves, why them? Why do we need them? We don't. Anyways, I got a little passionate there. But anyways, the entire world works to keep itself alive through a giant ecosystem of interconnectedness. And humans are a part of that. We don't exist outside of that. It would be so ignorant to continue believing that somehow all of nature exist in an ecosystem, but humans aren't a part of that. We are. We are a keystone species. We are connected to this. Many of us have lost that connection, but it is there, and we can find a way to fit it into our way of life and our culture within an understanding of reciprocity and interdependence. And maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to mitigate this disaster of a world and the climate crisis. And if you're thinking, that sounds really hard, how are we going to figure out how to do that? Not to worry, because Indigenous peoples already have a blueprint. They already have it designed. They already know exactly what we have to do to try and mitigate this climate crisis. They understand nature. They understand how the ecosystem works, and they know how humans can participate in it so that we can actually cause the flourishing of the natural world and of humans. And they sustained the landscape of North America for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It was beautiful. Parts of it are still beautiful. We see it everywhere. But what I mean is that nature isn't like how it was when Christopher Columbus sailed here on its own. It was because the Indigenous peoples learned how to steward it and actually learned how to help nature flourish in order to create abundance for themselves. They understood that if the natural world flourishes, humans will thrive because we need nature. We need oxygen. We need water. We need food. And all of that only happens. We only get that when nature is thriving. That's our part in the ecosystem. And I think that learning that really, really changed my life and the way that I view it. Because I think before, and I hear this in so many of my classmates and everything like that, it's just that, humans are terrible and, we don't need to be here and the earth is going to be better off without us anyways. We should just let ourselves go extinct. That's not true. That is not true. And, even if most of nature would be better off without us, how dare we run away and hide and leave all of these domesticated animals and plants to die? We force them to be here. Our cats, our dogs, cows, pigs, chickens, we force them all to be here, to be slaves to us. We have no right to say that they would be better off without us. They would be better off if we treated them better. But we have created this world and we need to uncreate it. And the perfect thing about it is, like I said, there's already a blueprint to that. There's already a way. There's already a way that we can exist with nature where we don't destroy it and we don't cause the extinction of several million species, including ourselves. There is a way to do that. It already exists. People already live that way. It's something like, I think, almost 4 billion people live completely off the land. Right now, as I'm telling you this, there are almost 4 billion people on this earth that just completely live off the land. In certain ways, they are forced to participate in globalization and the global economy because of various reasons, but they don't participate to climate change at all. Not even a little bit. They live completely off the land. And they're almost 4 billion people right now. So we can't sit here and say it's not possible. People have done it. They still do it. People want to do it. And just a couple kind of examples of this as I kind of come to a close, just to really solidify this understanding, is one thing I learned is that humans, the reason we can smell when it's going to rain is we can smell the moistening of the soil. And I think that's really cool, and it speaks to our evolutionary purpose because we are designed to love the earth and to smell it and to smell growth and regeneration and the rain that sustains life. We can smell it hit the earth. That's beautiful. That's amazing. And we are the earth. we participate in it. There are so many ways that indigenous peoples learned to help the earth flourish and help it grow and helped balance and create life and steward the land and produce agriculture and create resilient crops and all of these things. And they did it by working with nature, by listening to nature, by seeing nature as our teacher. Did you know humans designed the airplane based off of how birds can fly? And then we have the audacity to say we invented flying. We learned it from the birds. They taught us that. Without nature, we would be nothing. But also, we are not outside of it. We exist within it. We are a part of it. And if we can find a way to connect to it, which already exists, but I mean, if we can come together to find a way to really implement this structurally and systemically, there is hope in that. So, what I really hope that you guys can all take away from this episode is this feeling and this sense of hope and pride in humans that I completely understand is so hard to see. Because it seems like this world is just going downhill and there's no stopping it, and we're trying and nothing's working and all of these things. And I get that. I really do. I feel like that a lot. And stories like this, stories about a Christmas carol causing soldiers who were just 10 minutes before going to kill each other, and now they're drinking and laughing. How someone, and multiple people, but this is a specific example, about how someone, even in the face of conditioning and desensitization and dehumanization, still chose to stand up against the society that he was allowed to participate in. He still existed outside of it and knew it was wrong. Even in the face of extreme propaganda and manipulation, Nazi soldiers used their positions of social power to help people, and they risked their own lives and the lives of their families and their entire careers. They risked everything to help people because they knew it was wrong. This is who people are. This is who we are, and this is who we can be. I understand it's so hard to see because, like I said before, we live in a society where as you gain more and more social power, you're more and more encouraged to be dominative and to be violent and to be desensitized and to not care about people. But we have the chance to create a new society that is structured in ensuring that people within positions of social power, and obviously this would look different than what we have today, but we would have leaders within our communities and things like that. When you have people in these positions, we have a societal structure that encourages them to be compassionate and to be diplomatic and to be understanding and to be humble. We have the opportunity to create a society like that, and we can do it. And Indigenous peoples, and actually several other organizations and things like that, which are rooted in the beliefs created by Indigenous peoples, but regardless, they have the blueprints, they have books and ways, and all we need to do is start loving each other, start giving to each other, start trading with your friends, start learning how to sew your own clothes from clothes that you got from the thrift store, start learning how to grow your own food, grow your own herbs. And I want to make this very clear before I say this. I do believe in antibiotics and I do believe in pharmaceutical medicine to a degree, but I also want to say that it's important to learn how to create our own medicines when it comes to, just kind of topical treatments and stuff like that, in regards to vitamins and supplements and lotions and things for your hair and for your skin. Learn how to grow herbs that help you out with that and stuff. And I think it's very important that we also continue to include medicine in our society. I truly do not believe that we need to create a society where, pharmaceutical medicine doesn't exist. It's very important. I think antibiotics are important. vaccinations are important, all of these things, right? But we also need to have a society where we understand that our medicine comes from the earth and we create our medicine, and we can do that. And sure, there are more complicated processes that would require us to go outside of our homes and acquire the medicine from people that are qualified to be creating it when it comes to like antibiotics and vaccines, like I said, in regards to like, smaller things like the vitamins that I take every morning. I could make that myself out of herbs that I could grow in a garden. I could do that. I could also just eat enough vegetables and fruits, but that's another story. But we have the power to sustain ourselves and sustain each other. And we're going to get into, in so many other episodes, specific ways that we can do this and kind of laying out a foundation. But what I really wanted to get to with this episode, as I kind of draw to a close and a conclusion, is just a sense of hope. Because this sense of hope that I've had and this awakening that I've had has actually improved my ability to create change and connect with people. Because I think when you allow the world to seem like it's all bad and there's nothing good and we're so screwed, that's when you start not being able to help. And you can't be a good ally anymore. You can't be a change maker when you're stuck in this feeling of hopelessness. And to kind of close off, I want to briefly mention a video that I was shown in my GRSJ class on Thursday. As I was kind of leaving, we're watching a video of an Indigenous woman, and she's talking about forgiveness and the importance of forgiveness when it comes to understanding that if we choose revenge, if we choose violence, if we choose punishment, we are going to end up with the exact same society that we are fighting to end. No matter what. There are some people that understandably seem to deserve bad things, and they have done horrible things. But if we choose to do what they did to us to them, we become no better. And it's true. And I'm not saying that it's unjustified, but what we are doing is if we build a society like that out of the ashes of this one, we're going to get the same thing. We need a society that's rooted in hope and forgiveness and love and compassion and understanding. A society that reaches out to people that commit harm and pulls them back in and chooses to love them and to care for them. And this is, again, an Indigenous principle. We're going to transformative justice, restorative justice, healing justice, community building, things like that. These aren't my ideas. And we have the ability to do that. And we need to learn to forgive ourselves and not forget. That's the important part about this forgiveness. This forgiveness is actually just the refusal to be vengeful. We are going to fight for a better world, but we are not going to take revenge for this one. Because if we want a better world, we cannot be vengeful. We have to forgive. We have to move on. We have to create a system where punishment isn't carceral, that we don't throw people away, that we pull them back in. We don't push them out. We don't throw them in jail. We don't hang them. We don't give anybody the death sentence. We pull them in. We try. And if it doesn't work, we try again. And that doesn't mean we allow them to keep committing harm. Maybe, I think in the grand scheme of things, we could all agree that, if someone's, for whatever reason, a serial killer, you don't want to just keep letting them roam the streets and be like, hey, that was wrong. That's not what I mean. What I mean is we don't throw them in a jail cell and throw them away. We pull them in. We try again. We put them somewhere where they can't harm people, but where they also are constantly drawn back into the community, and where there are people that engage in trying to heal that brokenness and and even outside of that person, there's also the community that comes together and heals the broken aspects that person's harm had caused. So we as a community come together to support the families of the victims, to heal the brokenness, to love each other, to support each other, to come together. And then we also turn and face this person, the perpetrator, and we try to bring them back. We try to understand what was the reason why they did that. If they were abused as a child, we need to focus more on child abuse prevention. We need to have better psychologists in schools. It's all of that stuff. So as a close, finally, I know I kept saying this for the past 15 minutes, but I'm really going to stop myself now. There is hope. And I really hope that you guys can see that just through the few examples that I've kind of laid out, because in order to be effective change makers, in order to understand each other, we need to know that there is a chance, that there is hope, that there has always been hope, and there always will be hope. And we can do this. We are doing this. This isn't just some future imagination thing. This is the way we have lived in history. It is the way people are living now, and it is the way that I hope that we can all learn to live in the future. So with that, I'm going to close it off. I'm going to let you guys go. I hope that this has inspired you in your life to look at the world around you and feel love. And because something that I heard, I think it's a Bell Hooks quote. Bell Hooks is an author, an amazing author. If you're into kind of reading about the stuff that I'm talking about, you should definitely check them out. And the quote is, "Lovelessness to love." When you see this hope, when you see the value of life and the love of human nature, you all of a sudden transform your vision of the world from a world of lovelessness. Oh my goodness, that is very difficult to say for some reason. Lovelessness to love. And that's what I hope that this maybe has brought for you guys, this episode, because that's what it gave to me. That's what these stories and these authors and these things have shown me, is that for every person out there who does something terrible, there is 20 more people that want to come in and do healing, that want to fix it, that want to help, that want to love. And also, behind every person that commits harm is a cause, not an excuse, an explanation. Anyways, so I hope you guys leave today with a little bit of hope. I want you to go out in the world, and I want you to love people. I want you to love yourself. I want you to love your community. I want you to look at the food that you buy in the grocery store, and I want you to love the life that was taken for you to be alive and for you to eat. I want you to just love. Just love. Just go out, have hope, slap a smile on your face, and try to love something. Try to be in community. And most of all, start learning how to grow your own food, sew your own clothes, all of these things. We need to really start doing that. And start thrifting for clothes instead of buying new ones. Anyways, now I'm actually going to let you guys go. I'm just going to cut myself off. I'll see you next time. Ciao.